And welcome to Video Game Hangover. Wait, that was much too happy. It's our spooky Halloween show. Ooh. Hello, and welcome to Video Game Hangover. I don't know what's going on there. I'm Randy Dickinson, and I am in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. At some point, it just turns into the Count from Sesame Street, and it's not scary anymore. Yeah.
You got to, that's why they pay actors so much, is they know that fine line between terrifying Dracula and educational Dracula.
Right, exactly. Episode 517, 517.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm DJ Ross in Mountain View. I forget where we are in the script at this point.
Yep, I think we're right there. Spooky Mountain View.
Ooh.
Each week on Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. This week, we're taking that super literally. We're going to talk about super spooky games for Halloween, including Spookware, Inscryption, back in 1995, and Mayor Bones proudly presents Ghost Town's 1000th Annual Pumpkin Festival.
Oh, the spookiest game of them all.
Yeah. That's, nothing about that sounds spooky at all.
But his name is Mayor Bones. That's a little off-putting.
Okay, all right. I'll give you
that. Such disrespect for Mayor Bones.
So, happy Halloween, DJ.
Oh, thank you. Happy Halloween. Ooh.
Do you have fun, spooky plans for Halloween?
I do not. No. I mean, even in normal years, I don't get a lot of trick-or-treaters around here, so I've just kind of given up. This year I was like, well, maybe I should do the candy thing, but then I thought for a second, I'm like, I don't want random people coming to my door in these times, so just gonna, nail a couple more boards onto the door.
Excellent.
Keep people away. I don't know.
You don't want to be alone in the house with a giant bowl of candy either. That's the other...
No, I've learned that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Although maybe I'll do it just for old time's sake. Who knows?
Big plans here. We've done some fun kind of fall things. We went sort of and picked out pumpkins this weekend and bought a mum to put on the porch. So definitely dipping a toe into fall-like things. But it's 85 degrees here the other day. It doesn't feel like fall at all.
Yeah.
So bring on some cold weather. We'll talk about it.
Yeah, it's been a little chilly over here, so I think getting into it a little bit. But
excellent.
I don't know. I do have just an incredible library of spooky games that I assembled to prepare for this good. And
perfect.
It was probably too many because I didn't get to them all. So maybe I'll just stay in and play terrifying video games.
Good. Well, you got a few days, so yeah, you have plenty of time to get in all the spooky games you want.
Yeah.
Cool. You're doing some streaming too, right? I mean, on a related topic, you've been streaming some of these spooky games, right?
Yeah, I thought it would be fun because some of the streamers I watch have just been doing spooky games all month, and they're playing actually spooky games, which I don't know if I just have the the constitution to do for an entire month.
Like super terrifying Slender Man type of things, yeah.
Yeah, well, it was a mix of things. They were playing Until Dawn, and I think there was a little Resident Evil in there. And there was this other one called Visage, depending on how French you are.
Right.
But no, the games on my list are Mayor Bones presents the Ghost Town's Annual Pumpkin Festival. That's my level of spooky.
Excellent, that works. I admire that.
Although they're not all like that. There are some on my list that I feel are actually genuinely spooky. So
cool. At
some point I will just get to one as I play, spooky Russian roulette going through my games library. It's terrifying.
Yeah. I Googled, what are good scary games in 2021 that I should play, and it feels like it's sort of this list of, super terrifying, you'll never sleep again kind of video game experiences, and I'm like, I want like gentle scary. I don't mind a good scary movie or a scary video game, but I'm sort of, a lot of things in life are really scary right now. I think I just need sort of like, good humored scares.
Yeah, you need, the cat ghost bakes cupcakes or whatever.
Yeah. Or I need to discover that The Nightmare Before Christmas is playing all day on TNT and just, watch it 7 times. That's just exactly the right amount of scary I need in my life right now.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Can I tell you something very tenuously related to that? Is because of all the sort of hype and events leading up to the Final Fantasy XIV's expansion pack release next month. They had to bump the Halloween event they usually do, which I was like, oh man, that's disappointing. Last year they didn't even do it because of the pandemic, but so at least we're getting one this year. But as a result, I think it starts on like November 30th, and then it runs for 2 weeks. So like it's not even in November anymore. It's just straight up The Nightmare Before Christmas in Final Fantasy XIV for the first 2 weeks in December. Which I don't know what they're going to do for the event this year. I hope they have something in mind, though. Like a Christmas crossover would be hysterical, because they also do a Christmas event.
Cool. That's the way to do it. That's my sort of Animal Crossing vibe, is I don't ever want to take down my Halloween costumes or Halloween decorations, but I do want to put up my Christmas decorations, so I end up with like little towers of spooky jack-o'-lanterns with Christmas trees in my plaza. So yeah, I get that. I appreciate that aesthetic.
Yeah, kind of have to roll your own Nightmare Before Christmas.
Right,
exactly.
But
it works.
Yeah. Well, as we roll into November, we do want to point out that we are participating in Extra Life 2021 this year. Yet again, for, what is the 7th year in a row?
I think it was the 8th year.
8th year, that's awesome. For those who don't know, this is an all-day gaming marathon to raise money for children's hospitals in our communities. We would love for you to join us, support us financially if you want to donate, support us with moral support and motivation throughout the day. If you want to jump in and do that, you can watch us stream. We'll be on twitch.tv/VGHangover almost all day. And you can get all kinds of information about how to donate, how to watch us, what games we're going to play at VGHangover.com/extralife.
Yeah. Head on over there and check it out. We've got the schedule online. It continues to get more and more added to it as the event draws nearer.
You're much more organized about this than I am. I need to get my shit together.
Well, I mean, got some time.
Yeah, a little bit of days.
Notably, I have just added, speaking of spooky games, just added this game called Evil Tonight to the Spooky Block, which will be taking place around 10 p.m. Pacific on game day. It describes itself as a survival horror game, but it looks like a 16 or 32-bit like JRPG of that style. Yeah. So I'm very curious about that. Got some pretty positive reviews. But I'll be checking that out, and if there's time, whatever other games on my list that I don't get to this month. So, should be interesting.
Yeah. I do want to get a game of Back 4 Blood together. I'm trying to piece it together with the folks in our Discord community. You can get an invite to our Discord, a link to our Discord at VGHangover.com as well, if that appeals to you. And if you have Xbox Game Pass and want to join my team for some Back 4 Blood, this is the kind of spiritual sequel to Left 4 Dead, the zombie killing escape survival game. I'm itching to check that out, and Halloweenish times and Extra Life seem like the perfect opportunity to do that. So if you want to round out my team and have Game Pass or whatever and want to jump in with me, get in touch. You can find me on Twitter or jump into a Discord and set that thing up.
Yeah, that sounds like it'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely.
I was never a huge fan of Left 4 Dead, so I will, graciously offer up my seat in the, what are you going to 4 people on the team?
I believe that's right, yeah.
Yeah, so somebody else can step in for me. I'm sure they will do a much better job than I would have.
You can pilot the helicopter that we're all trying to get to escape the zombie horde, yeah.
Okay, I'll make a cameo at the very end.
Right, exactly. Little cameo from DJ Ross on the helicopter at the end.
Unplayable
Come on, guys,
NPC.
let's go. Right, exactly. Yep.
Can you fly a helicopter in this? You didn't really operate any vehicles in Left 4 Dead, did you?
No, I believe that in Left 4 Dead that was an NPC, and
okay.
I'm being funny.
Yeah, no, I get it. I just wasn't sure.
I know it's hard to tell sometimes, but that was humor.
That's what they've been talking about.
Exactly.
But no, I don't know if they added vehicles with this new one. It does seem like a bit of a departure from the originals, if that were the case. But
yeah,
could be interesting.
Maybe, could very well be, but I'm not aware of that.
Maybe there's like a robot dog you can recruit and
cool.
Have it follow you around.
Maybe I don't need friends at all. Maybe I just need an army of robot dogs.
You need 3 robot dogs, and you're good.
In. Let's do it.
All right. Well, invitations rescinded for Back 4 Blood.
But you should still check out our Extra Life programming. That is, again, coming up on Saturday, November 6th. VGHangover.com/extra life for more info.
Yeah, it'll be real good. If you can, we always appreciate it if you can help out with any amount helps, really. It's all going to a good cause. But if you can't, it's great if you just show up in the chat and say hello, make some sarcastic comment about how horribly we're doing in whatever game we're playing, Just keep it, wholesome.
Sure.
But yeah,
children are listening.
Always super fun.
Yeah. And, do a thing that we love doing anyways, which is having an excuse to play video games for a long period of time and, raise money for a good cause.
Yeah.
So let's get to our list of spooky games. I played a couple, you played a couple. Where do you want to jump in, DJ?
I think we got to jump in with Mayor Bones proudly presents Ghost Town's 1000th Annual Pumpkin Festival.
Seems like a logical place to begin.
Yeah. I mean, this is how I started off. I did an evening of spooky games streaming the other night, and this is what I decided to kick it off with, just because it seemed appropriate. But this is just a fun little thing by Adam Yu, who was the creator of A Short Hike.
Oh, excellent.
He made this thing, it's very simple, really. It's just like a pumpkin carving simulator. So, long title aside.
Sure.
You get a little, what do they call it? Like a cart, a horse-drawn cart of pumpkins that is sort of generated before you. And, there are pumpkins of all shapes and sizes. You can get a little tiny one. You can get very large and just oblong, just weirdly shaped pumpkins. You can get an orange pumpkin. You could, maybe if you're lucky, you get a green one. You can ask them to, recycle the cart as many times as you want until you find your ideal pumpkin, which is kind of exciting.
Oh, excellent. So it's like rolling up an Animal Crossing island. Just keep hitting reset until you get the one you want. Yeah. Cool.
But after you've selected your ideal pumpkin, you just head over to a little carving station and you just carve it up like, you would a regular pumpkin. I don't know how much I need to describe how that works. But they keep it very simple. This is not like the world's most advanced or realistic pumpkin carving simulator. It's like it's all you need, really. They give you a little scraper tool, so if you're advanced, you can kind of, if you scrape off the outer layer of a pumpkin so some of the light shines through.
Yeah.
And then they give you a carving tool, so that's kind of the classic move, right? You just go at it with your pumpkin knife. And you just carve up the pumpkin of your dreams. Very nice, very wholesome.
Cool. Is there templates and stuff, or do you just sort of freestyle the design?
No templates. In fact, at one point I was kind of wishing that, when I actually get around to carving a pumpkin in real life, I will, kind of trace out the design I want with a pencil or something, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't exist in this, unfortunately. But it's just, it's not even a real pumpkin. It's very low pressure the whole time. There's an undo button you can keep hitting if you really screw something up, but...
Oh, excellent. That's helpful. I've destroyed many a pumpkin not having a plan before I started carving, and there's no way back from that, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's very, very low pressure. If you don't like your design, if it gets too far off the rails, you can just go back to the cart and get another one. if it comes to that point.
Excellent.
But eventually, you kind of lock in your pumpkin design. And at that point, you head over to, I guess, the ghost town, or wherever this is taking place. And you're greeted with just this little spooky kind of corner of it looks like just, I don't know, some town in the middle of fall. They got all their hay bales out and a little spooky mansion in the corner. And around this entire area are all these other pumpkins that have been carved by other players playing this game. And the idea is you go and you find a spot and you put your pumpkin down. But it was super fun to just walk around this little fall sort of setup and look at all the other pumpkins people have carved and all the little the fun ideas they had.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's cool that it kind of networks in that way and like pulls down other designs. That's great.
Yeah. And it was quite a range of designs. You had like your just classic sort of jack-o'-lantern looking faces, like the triangle eyes, all the way over to there were multiple little Among Us astronauts, as you might expect. But really
Sure.
just the whole range of weird characters and really some clever pumpkin carving going on.
Awesome. Probably even more impressive using kind of the tool set from the game to execute that.
Yeah. I think one of I don't know how true this is, but when you go to actually place your pumpkin, it sort of gives the impression that there's a finite number of spaces to actually place one. So the first place I went to, it was like almost completely full. And it actually warned me. It was like, this area is so popular, you may not be able to find a space for your pumpkins. I thought, oh man, I'm a little late to the game, I guess. But it looked like about 7 or 8 different, or not different, but identical, just alternate spaces, or like versions of the space you can go to that are, if everybody is filled up all the slots in space number 1, you just go to the second one and hopefully find a space for it there.
Excellent.
And
it's like the Head Museum in Futurama.
that's it.
Yeah. It's the mental image I have right now in my brain anyways. I'm like, most things in life kind of go back to Futurama in some way or another, but good. Excellent.
Yeah. So I don't know what happens when they are all filled up. If you're just, at that point it's too late to put in a new pumpkin, you can certainly still carve one. You just may not be able to display it. But the fun part is, I think you can just go into one of the spaces and see the pumpkins I carved. Although I think it anonymizes all of them, so you'll have to look very carefully.
Do they give credit? Like, if I sort of click on it or something, does it say DJ made this?
I don't think it will. So you'll just have to, take your best guess. But super fun. It's free on itch.io. You just go, carve pumpkins to your heart's content and then explore these sort of virtual pumpkin patches and just appreciate everyone else's designs. You may even run into a spooky ghost as you explore around, so watch out. But anyway.
Excellent.
Very cool, very fun, wholesome Halloween game to check out.
Awesome. Kid-friendly? Would this be something you could play with if you had sort of kids in the house?
Oh, totally, yeah. Completely kid-friendly.
Oh, cool.
They're with the caveat that, these are just random designs uploaded by people on the internet. There is like a report function, so if you see something that is just, not really appropriate, you can report it, and eventually some moderator will take it down. But there's always that risk that you run into somebody's inappropriate pumpkin before they've noticed it.
Sure.
I would say
just a shelf full of dick pumpkins.
I would say 99% of the time, definitely kid friendly.
Excellent.
I mean, you don't even have to go to the pumpkin patch. You could just spend an afternoon carving pumpkins if you want to.
Sure. Great. And no messy cleanup. You don't destroy your kitchen in the process.
Yeah. I didn't even think about that. But no pumpkin goop to deal with.
None of that funky smell that gets in the house.
Yeah. Your hands are not just stained orange for the next few days. It's good.
I do like roasting and eating pumpkin seeds, though. I'll miss that part.
No, you have to bring those on your own.
Yeah. There's not a sort of a simulator for that yet, unfortunately.
It's just like every once in a while you extend out just fake arm into a bowl of pumpkin seeds.
Munch, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe next year.
Excellent. What a weird and delightful little thing.
Yeah, it's cool. I think this is actually the second year it's been around. So he like turns off the servers for it a certain number of days after Halloween. So it's kind of a limited time thing, which is kind of exciting.
Yeah.
So get in on it if that sounds interesting to you.
Fun. Or you might have to wait till next year.
Yeah.
For Mayor Bones proudly presents Ghost Town's 1000th and 1th.
Yeah.
1001st annual pumpkin festival.
I don't know if they if it was like
Does he round up the number
must have been the 999th last year. Who knows what will happen.
Excellent. Cool. Any connection to a short hike at all that's visible anyways?
No, not really. No. I didn't even see any short hike themed pumpkins. Although there were plenty of little like video game throwbacks, which was fun. Oh, I really wanted to carve a Metroid pumpkin. I totally forgot. I got distracted and did something else. But I feel like a Metroid, just the shape of a Metroid lends itself very well to being carved onto a pumpkin.
Oh, the actual like creepy head crab Metroid itself?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. That's a good call.
To go back and do that.
Yeah. Share some screenshots, DJ.
All right, well, yeah, I took them. I'll put them in the show post.
Cool. That sounds like fun.
That was good.
I played a fun little spooky game called Spookware. It is, it's got a WarioWare kind of vibe. That's where the ware comes in that you will spend a lot of time playing a series of little like microgames, of little sort of like twitch control, super fast response games where you have to quickly sort of assess like, what is my objective? What do I have to do? How do the inputs work? What do the buttons do in this little screen? And as a little timer is counting down, so you have to sort of quickly sort of figure out, what am I trying to do? But all of the little micro games in this are horror movie themed, are sort of horror tropes in a lot of ways. So there's a kind of a loose plot here where you have three little skeleton friends, lefty, midi, and righty.
You got it.
Hanging out. Yeah, that's it. Yep. Hanging out on the couch in their basement watching horror movies. And each little sort of micro game takes the form of a VHS tape that gets put in. And over the course of the game, you build your like video cassette library, and you have access to all of the games on demand. You can kind of, again, if you unlock enough of them, you can kind of create a little remix program of your favorites or the ones you find most challenging, and stuff like that, which is kind of fun. There's a ton of them in this. I think there's slots for like 300 VHS tapes.
Wow.
Which means 300 little challenging micro games that you can kind of plug into this remix program. So you will get kind of an initial batch of VHS tapes of little micro games for you to challenge your way through. And then Lefty, Midi, and Righty will get a little bored and want to go out and explore the town. And then it turns into Paper Mario, where you've got three little characters who climb out of their little crypt apartment in their basement and head out. And you start at the school in the local town, and you explore the school, and people challenge you to complete little games. You find little cassettes with additional games on them. Somebody's trying to build a band, and you have to recruit members of the band, and all of the members of the band will only join your team, will only join your band if you can beat their little micro game. So they'll give you a cassette tape that has a game on it.
Okay. So I mean, it's like the story mode or whatever from WarioWare, more or less.
Right. Yeah, or I got like a Professor Layton vibe to it, where you go around, you talk to people, and nobody will give you information or help you until you solve their little puzzle. So it feels a lot like that. But all the while, you're hoping you unlock kind of cool new mini games or micro games.
Yeah. Why didn't they put Professor Layton in Smash Brothers? It just occurred to me. That seems like nobody remembers that guy.
Yeah, he was on a wish list, as we're doing a little detour here for Smash, apparently. But there was a list of, where did I hear it? Some podcast I was listening to where they were talking about the little kiddo from Kingdom Hearts being kind of the final Smash character, and all the ones that maybe people had sort of suggested as alternates, and Phoenix Wright and Professor Layton were on that list, and I was like, that's awesome. I would play both of those, or would watch people play both of those. That'd be amazing. Plus, I would want little amiibos of both of those characters.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. But anyways, back to Spookware. So,
it's Professor Layton
some examples
with ghosts,
with little skeleton boys solving horror movie puzzles. Yeah, some of them are, you're in a spooky cabin in the woods and you have an axe and you're trying to chop a piece of wood and you have to figure out what the right controls are to sort of chop the wood. You have one that's a guillotine, and watermelons will roll through it periodically and you have to hit the right button to slice the watermelon at exactly the right time. So these are not like gory, blood dripping down the wall kind of horror movie tropes, but just kind of goofy, fun, PG-13-ish kind of horror movie tropes.
Oh, it doesn't even a couple watermelons drop down, but then the third one, when you're supposed to hit the button, it's an actual head. An actual human head? No.
Yeah. Unless that comes later, I've not found that, no.
Interesting.
Yeah. The sort of the most gruesome one I've found thus far is you have to saw off your leg.
Oh, no.
So it's a leg, and you have kind of a rusty handsaw.
Really escalated quickly.
Yep. And you have to through your leg as you sort of like figure out what controls can move the saw back and forth. The leg will sort of move apart from its body, and you can see sort of a cross section that looks like hamburger essentially. But that is probably the most gruesome one that I've encountered. The rest of them are in general, kind of what I talked about earlier in the show, spooky, but not necessarily like terrifying.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I like the idea that it would be like 9 out of 10 games are just kind of silly fun, and the 10th one is just horrifying. It's just like, look, Mom, it's fine. And then somebody saws his leg off.
Yeah. There's little like bits and pieces of fun, like clip art or like found footage kind of things from old black and white freak show movies and horror movies, and kind of Universal monsters looking ones, although I suspect these are public domain and certainly not Universal monsters, but people in kind of mummy costumes that clearly look like they're made out of like toilet paper or whatever. Just kind of fun stuff kind of happening in the background while you're trying to solve fairly mundane puzzles. I don't know if this is necessarily something, my question earlier, that I would share with kids. But if you're looking for something unusual and fun, it's got a really good sense of humor to it, as you like the watermelon one with the guillotines. You go through chop, 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 and hopefully you chop all 3 of the watermelons at the right time. Yeah. And if you do it before the timer runs out, the screen will freeze and you'll get a little thumbs up kind of emoji or whatever, a little happy sound, and it'll say, juicy. Just kind of goofy stuff like that. Yeah. It is a game full of like really bizarro, weird kind of horror movie, tangentially horror movie related kind of non sequiturs that I don't know, I sort of appreciated. It seemed like somebody put a lot of love into this and came up with 300 goofy horror movie related micro games they made.
Yeah, that must have been a lot of fun. Just sit down and just brainstorm how you can get 300 games out of these things.
Right, exactly. And then, you have the opportunity to kind of go back to the 3 little skeleton boys' basement where they have their couch and their TV set up, and you can wander over to the shelves where they keep all their VHS cassettes, and you can sort of see all the ones that you kind of filled in as you were out exploring the town and talking to other people and solving their little challenges, and watch your kind of collection grow. Yeah, it's super fun. I had a really good time with it. It's a lot of content. I certainly did not find all 300 tapes. The developers have actually said this is sort of episode 1, that they intend to add more to it over time.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, so this is a weird, fun little discovery. Again, like I said at the beginning, if you are looking for something that's sort of gently creepy for Halloween and like the whole WarioWare micro game thing, man, have I got a game for you.
I can't stop thinking now about why hasn't somebody made the Star Trek version of this, where like 300 micro games. Of course, you have the ones where it's like, fly the ship through an asteroid field or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have the opportunity to do one where it's like just the one computer simulation somebody is running for like 5 seconds off the side of the screen in like one episode. I can just imagine that being up on the screen, somebody freaking out like, oh, that was what that one crew member was doing. Now we have to do it. I don't know. I just like, I'm hoping there would be, they managed to toss in some super obscure kind of like horror movie references into this thing.
Into the Star Trek one or into this?
Well, I mean, probably Spookware. I don't know if it would be as appropriate in the Star Trek one. But, like one of the fun things about WarioWare is there'd be all these references to like Nintendo games. Or I guess it's mostly Nintendo games, but just it's kind of a surprise seeing just really obscure stuff pop up.
Yeah, it would be awesome if, and I suspect this is a, and I know nothing about the developers here. I'm just guessing that this is, this is an indie game. This is not made with $1 billion budget. But if enough people kind of get into this and hype it and spend some money on it, it's $10 to download. You can get it on itch.io or you can get it on Steam. Mm-hmm. That maybe in future iterations they will actually have, partnerships with, I don't know, whoever owns the rights to Friday the 13th and the Halloween movies and stuff like that, and be able to kind of slot in some fun, mini games based on or micro games based on actual horror movie properties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah. I was with what Dead by Daylight has done. That, that was a game much like the Friday the 13th one where, one person is sort of the horror movie killer and the rest are, the co-eds trying to sort of save their lives, the camp counselors trying to escape or whatever. And over time, they've partnered with, the Scream franchise and Silent Hill, I think, has some monsters in there and, just other places where there are creepy things in pop culture, in video games, in movies, and created challenges and in-game assets based on those things. So, I would love to see Spookware sort of grow in that direction. It's awesome that they came up with 300 without being able to do that. But, as you continue to grow the thing, Spookware Volume 2, it'd be neat to see some kind of fun horror movie stuff dropped in there.
What was that game you played? It was like another horror themed thing, but it had a bunch of references to like really blatant references to like Friday the 13th.
Oh, it was like Slayaway Camp or Sleepaway Camp?
Yeah, no, that sounds right.
Yeah.
But those were not officially licensed references, were they? They were just kind of doing that?
No, yeah, they had, there was one called Hockey Mask Killer and stuff like that, where they would, just sort of generic, I get what you're putting down, but, they changed the color of the mask to purple or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking, like, I wonder how similar you can make it. Like, I wonder how much Jason is in the public domain, like how much you can really copyright Hockey Mask.
Sure. Before you end up getting sued.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it a situation where you're sort of better off, begging for forgiveness than asking for permission in advance? Right. Yeah.
Suddenly you've got like 20 movie studios all suing you.
Right. Yeah. And then you wish you had a multi-billion-dollar budget to defend yourself.
Yeah. Well, that sounds cool. I'm not sure what to make of it. The fact that 1 minute you're slicing watermelons and the next minute it's your own leg, but it's interesting balance.
Oh, that escalated quickly.
Yeah.
But hey, listen, when you're trying to come up with ideas for 300 minigames, you have to
sure
maybe go down some dark alleys to figure these to find some ideas.
I mean, in a weird way, I'm more surprised by the watermelons than the leg getting sliced off.
That was kind of my take on it. Like the first, you go through that first cycle in the beginning where you sort of start in the kid's basement watching, 10 kind of randomly selected VHS cassettes of micro games. And I'm like, some of these are surprisingly wholesome, like the whole chopping a log thing. Like it's kind of black and white and creepy in the background and there's like dead trees and stuff like that, but that's as spooky as it gets. You're really just sort of flicking the joystick up and down to like simulate the motion of, I just banged on the table, I apologize to my producer, to simulate the motion of an axe going through a piece of wood. But I'm like, oh, maybe the wood will start bleeding or something, but nope, it's just you chopping a piece of wood. So yeah, it's spooky, but only kind of tangentially.
All right. Yeah. Well, that sounds like kind of my thing.
Yeah, that's probably your right speed.
Mm-hmm. Oh, cool. This did pop up like while I was browsing Itch over the last week looking for spooky stuff. I saw this in there a couple of times. I was like, yeah, you knew you were going to be getting into it, so I held off.
Yeah. There's some other than the hook of the micro games. There's some really fun kind of writing and interactions in it, where you're wandering around town talking to the high school principal and other students at the high school for starters, and they're all, of course, versions of skeleton people. They're skeleton heads on a normal person's body, and there's some again really bizarro and kind of funny, joke setups and punchlines in those little interactions and stuff. It's definitely worth exploring, and clearly a lot of kind of love and enthusiasm for WarioWare and for horror movies have gone into making this thing. So, would recommend Spookware.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds like a good time.
Yeah.
I remember when I played another game. Man, I had so many just weird little games on my list. Some of them were not very long, so I didn't include all of them. But I want to talk about back in 1995. But before that, I played this game called The Night That Speaks, which incidentally is another game by Adam Yu.
Oh.
And I think it was made during like a Game Boy game jam, so it looks like it, could run on a Game Boy.
Oh, excellent.
Or at least it has the color palette that looks like it was running on a Game Boy. But it's basically a very simple version of, the Slender Man game, where you're in the forest and you're trying to collect notes. And at some point, Slender Man starts chasing you.
Yeah.
It's similar to that, where you're kind of in like a crypt or some kind of labyrinth. And it's all in first person. And it's a bit of a maze, and at some point you realize that you're being pursued by something. So it's a little spooky. This is actually it looks kind of cute. A lot of Adam stuff. It's pretty cute. Like there was this other game he did called Spooky House, which was like very silly, but not terrifying at all. But this one, it's actually kind of unsettling with these things chasing you. Like he does a really good job with the audio as well.
Oh, wow.
And there's sort of this very vague plot that builds up. You're like looking for somebody who has disappeared into this crypt, and you keep finding these notes that are clues as to what may have happened. Meanwhile, this thing is just getting closer and closer to you, and like you hear your heartbeat speeding up. And at one point, one of the notes you read talks about there's some evil power closing in on you. And the only way you can fight back against it is to exert your will, like just the pure force of your will. The way you do that in this game is it's like there's one button, you just turn around and you face this thing which is chasing you, which is sometimes it's like this like skeleton looking thing. Sometimes it's this otherworldly like mouth monster. But you like turn around and look at it, you push the button, and the character just like in first person sticks out their middle finger and just like shoves it in their face until it just fades away and leaves you alone. I was like, oh man, this is exactly what I need, because like the Slender Man game, as much as the premise sounded very interesting, the fact that you're just like looking for things in a dark forest and you have this growing threat pursuing you. I didn't really like the idea that you just had to keep going and just sort of stay ahead of Slender Man. You didn't really have any options to deal with him as he caught up to you. But on this one, if you could just turn around and give it the finger, that is like, I mean, that may as well be what I would do if I were actually in that situation. So I love it. It's like really spooky because you don't know where these things are pursuing you. And it's a bit of a maze, so you have to just like, you do a lot of backtracking because you're lost a lot of the time. But I would find myself just like turning around and be like, I exert my will, and just like throw up the finger until the monsters get, frustrated and go away.
Excellent.
But just a silly little game jam game that is actually kind of frightening.
That's funny. You meant just sort of the brainstorming session around, like, okay, we need some sort of ability to kind of fight back, something to sort of defend yourself. Oh, give it the finger. That's
yeah. Don't need to overthink it.
Yeah, do what most rational humans would probably do in a similar situation.
Yeah. Like, what's left? What else can you do at that point?
Right, exactly. That's funny as hell.
So anyway, that's The Night That Speaks. Very good. A quick little spooky game. The kind of big game I played this week is called Back in 1995. I've been trying to get to this one for a while. Been trying to get to it so long, in fact, that so it turns out it came out in 2015. So
Oh, wow.
it was a throwback 20 years ago at that point to 1995. But anyway, finally getting around to it. It describes itself, this is straight off the Steam page. It says, it is a throwback to the survival horror and mystery games of the original PlayStation, faithfully recreating everything from this forgotten era of games. Which I don't know if it's exactly forgotten at this point. Like, it wasn't that long ago. But maybe, people playing survival games these days may not have played maybe the original Resident Evil or like Silent Hill 1. So, I don't know. Maybe it is a little bit forgotten. But what drew me to this is that there are tons of retro games out there, or tons of indie games that sort of bill themselves as retro games, but I feel like a lot of them they make their way up to the like kind of 16-bit or 32-bit eras where there's still a lot of like sprite art or like at least 2D games really, and they just kind of stop there. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, where are all the retro like PlayStation 1 games? Where are the games with just terrible 3D and like really unsophisticated like graphics and control schemes?
And bad cameras. Don't forget about the bad cameras for the PS1 era.
All that good stuff. People still didn't really know how to make a game work in 3 dimensions. So like looking at the screenshots of this, I was like, oh, here it is.
Yeah.
So, I mean, right down to the fact that the guy in this is just dressed as every other like survival horror protagonist from the era. He's got like the leather jacket and jeans. I was like, oh, I've played as this guy before. So it starts up, and so you like wake up, but you don't really wake up really. You're just kind of like, the game begins with you as this guy, the aforementioned leather jacket. And there's this tower in the distance. He's like on the top of some building or somewhere in some city. And in just a voiceover as inept as you would expect, he just says something like, well, there's the tower. I guess I better get over there. And then that's just the start of the game. And from there, it turns into just, you steering a guy around using those classic sort of Resident Evil survival horror tank controls where you have to rotate yourself and you can only really walk forwards and backwards. And you don't really have any explanation for just like what is happening, really. It's sort of up to you to find clues and talk with other characters along the way. It's actually kind of an adventure game, a little bit more than survival horror. Because while there are weird monsters roaming around, you never really feel like you need to conserve ammo or like healing items as much as you did in those like really early survival horror games, which I appreciate because that is not really what I wanted. I just wanted to just play some just janky PS1 style game and not really have to struggle with it too much.
So you want the aesthetic and environment of a PS1 game, but you actually want it to sort of, be more enjoyable to play.
Yeah. I really just want the weird 3D, just really primitive character models and stuff like that.
Sure.
Although with that said, so the controls and graphics are not very good. And it's hard to tell whether that is, I mean, obviously some of it is due to just that's how they wanted to design it, because it's intentionally kind of a throwback. But I found myself playing it and just thinking like, man, I played a lot of these games back then. I don't remember them being like this bad. I'm not sure if they were like doing this intentionally, because like the speed at which this guy turns, as part of the tank controls just feels like much slower and more cumbersome than like Chris or Jill back in Resident Evil. The graphics, I mean, I love the graphics just because it's so Like everything is so low poly, and the textures are enormous, and there's like just a lot of weird texture tearing and distortion going on. Which I'm like, oh, it's would be a weird effect in another game, but in this it just feels like it's emulating just old PS1 graphics, which were not very good. So a lot of the time, I mean, it's not a great game just in terms of being able to play it,
right?
But that's
it has the luxury of sort of saying that those things are kind of deliberate and kind of appropriate to the era they're kind of aping.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because like I don't know how much of it is like just intentionally bad or if it's just actually poorly designed. But the fact that it is this throwback to an old PS1 game, I think buys the developer a lot of sort of like a lot of leeway in terms of what he can get away with.
Well, perfect then.
Yeah. So it was fine. I eventually like kind of sucked it up and dealt with it. The combat, as you would expect, is not good. Like, the characters in those games, they're always like, oh, well, you're not a Navy SEAL or anything, so you're just terrible at shooting a gun or swinging a lead pipe or whatever. So it's the same kind of deal in this, but on the bright side, the enemies in this game they seem to be just as inept as you are as attacking you. So it's a pretty simple matter of just going up to them and they will do some kind of like threatening growl sound effect. And that is your cue to just step back a couple of feet while they wind up and take a swing at you and just completely whiff. And then at that point you can go in and bash them with your wrench a couple times. So
excellent.
That part at least feels like they're throwing the player a little bit of a bone. It's like, okay, so they're going to be monsters, but it's not super threatening.
I'm having flashbacks to me trying to sort of kill anything that's attacking me in the first Silent Hill game, and
yeah. So I mean, it reminds me, like, out of all those retro survival horror games, it reminds me of Silent Hill the most. Probably because, like, first of all, he just looks like the guy, and it's not like the backgrounds aren't pre-rendered like they were in Resident Evil. They're all 3D, so it's a little bit. It's like not entirely static. The camera kind of tracks the main character as he walks around a little bit, and also, yeah, he is just an awful combatant, just totally inept with a gun. But it's fine. That's kind of the point.
Right. And at least you're evenly matched.
Yeah. That I appreciated a lot because I was like, oh man, if I have to actually struggle against like a boss monster in this game, I don't know if I'm going to have the patience. But it's fine.
The bosses actually have sort of like predator-like hunting skills, and you're still just sort of like swinging a pipe at nothing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Fortunately, that's not the case.
Good. Excellent.
So I don't know, like overall, I feel like I can really only recommend this to people who, I don't know, are really into that PS1 aesthetic and they completely know what they're getting into while playing this. Because it's not a modern game by any means. It's intentionally not a modern game.
Right. Does it work as a genre piece? Is it sort of effectively kind of spooky from a horror movie or horror video game kind of perspective?
It's not even that spooky, so that was also a little bit of a maybe a misstep on my part. Yeah, I thought it was going to be spookier than it actually was, but it's really just, occasionally there are monsters. It never has quite the tension of Silent Hill or Resident Evil, because most of the time you feel like you're pretty well supplied, I suppose.
Gotcha.
But it's fine in this case. Like I said, I don't need to be terrified all the time.
Right. Excellent. And, and Silent Hill and Resident Evil are games that exist that you can play.
Sure. Yeah, there are plenty of options out there. As far as, like, does it come together as a game? I don't know. I feel like, not really. Like, it does have interesting things with sort of like meta text at the end, where as you get more and more clues to what's happening, you think like, oh man, this starts to become kind of self-referential, which I thought was interesting. But really, I feel like you need to be sold on the premise of just playing an old, 20, 25-year-old video game for you to get the full enjoyment out of it.
Right.
So really just kind of an interesting oddity for people who are into this very specific type of retro game. Without spoiling too much, I will say that at the end, there is a sort of a message from the developer. It's like quite a long-winded message from the developer, actually.
Like in the closing credits kind of thing?
Kind of, yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
Which it kind of explains a little bit what's going on with the game, but I actually really resonated with me. And this is like, I think it speaks the best to people who are like big fans of PS1 games or just games from that era, because it's very much about that developer's sort of history, or like his gaming history and his relationship with games like Resident Evil and Silent Hill 1. So I don't know if it made the rest of the game any more effective or successful to me, but I just thought it was I really appreciated what he had to say. So,
oh, neat.
I think other people, like other gamers my age or who grew up with like PlayStation 1 in particular, would probably appreciate it as well.
Cool. Well, that's interesting. I don't know. I wish more games had like an opportunity to, include like a director's commentary or just some sort of like breaking the wall a little bit and kind of seeing through kind of the creative process or whatever, if you choose to, like afterwards or from the menu or something. Yeah, I think that's was the one we played last year for Halloween. Home,
yeah, that had that going on.
Yeah, they did kind of an ultimate edition that had a director's kind of cut that you could turn on, and it would give, it put little icons in the game as you were playing. Otherwise, just playing the game and exploring, you could kind of click on, and it would give you a little pop-up box, and it included, screenshots and drafts of storyboards and stuff like that, so you could kind of see the mechanism that went into kind of creating that scene in the game. And it was, there's not a lot of like transparency in video game development.
Right.
So it's really interesting when something like that happens.
Yeah. Anyway,
well, that's cool.
Yeah, so I don't know if I would say I enjoyed the game itself. I mean, it was very interesting. It was I kind of got what I wanted out of it, just this weird throwback experience, plus that very nice message from the developer at the end.
Cool.
So, yeah, no, I have now played back in 1995.
Well, good. You can cross it off your list.
Yeah. I was actually trying to figure out what else this developer had done. His name is Takaaki Ichijo. And it seemed like I was kind of coming out blank, kind of looking up online. It seemed like this is the kind of his major credit. But, I'd be curious, especially with like seeing his sort of approach to this type of retro game, to see what else he would come up with. But anyway, back in 1995... weird stuff. Kind of made me want to play the original Silent Hill again. It's been a long time since I played that one.
Yeah, I've not played that probably in 20 years. So I would be interested in knowing how playable it is at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Well, the other spooky game, the last spooky game that I played for this week is called Inscryption.
Yeah.
And that is in the word inscription with crypt in the middle. Just if you're trying to Google this or look it up on Steam. Weird little spelling thing. It's a Y instead of an I in the middle.
Yeah.
This is where's the? I wanted to pull up the little description because I think this kind of is fun. Inscryption is an inky black card-based odyssey that blends deck-building roguelike, escape room-style puzzles, and psychological horror into a blood-laced smoothie.
Well, that doesn't sound pleasant.
Delicious. It absolutely is all of those things. So I'm interested in playing the full game. Don't really have sort of time in my life to jump into the whole thing just yet, because I think I would go at this pretty hard. But there's a demo. I would encourage, if this appeals to anybody, look up the demo on Steam. It is PC only at this point. It has not come to any consoles or anything like that yet. Hopefully there are plans in the works for that to happen. But for now, the full game and the demo, of which I played, is available on Steam to grab for free. So yeah, a deck building game. You basically start the game kind of at a table in a dark room, kind of lit by candlelight. And out of the darkness, sort of across from you, kind of emerges the other player, the other person you're playing cards with, essentially. And it is sort of disembodied, long, kind of like gruesome fingers kind of coming at you from across the table with just dark, menacing, glowing eyes in the darkness.
Yeah.
And
really
that's
kind
of all you
use
get.
Of like lighting effects in this.
Yeah, and that's where I think sort of the inky black thing kind of comes in. There is a whole, you're kind of in a black pit. You're in a dark cabin, presumably in the woods, not very well lit. And yeah, a lot of kind of the creepiness of it kind of hinges on things kind of coming at you out of the darkness. You do have opportunities to kind of get up from the table and kind of wander around the room, and you'll have to do challenges and kind of little escape room type puzzles and stuff like that. If you back yourself into a corner during the card game with your other player, he will give you challenges to sort of do things in the room to be able to resume the game or save your life or et cetera, other things that kind of keep you playing. Mm-hmm. So you're not always playing cards, which is kind of a fun little hook for a game like this. Yeah, so I won't get into sort of like the intricacies of the how to play the game. The game does it really, really well. I think the demo does it exceptionally well. Sort of breaks down the basic mechanics. You essentially are sort of trying to create kind of a grimoire of characters that will take on and challenge the cards that the other player is putting down. And all the cards that you play have a life score and have an attack score, and you're basically just trying to obviously stay alive while doing more damage to your attacks at the end of every round. To be able to deploy a card, to put down a card, let's say you have a card in your hand that is a grizzly bear. Well, that's a powerful character. That requires 3 sacrifices. So you have to go through all of the cards in your hand and find ones that have heart points and decide that you want to sacrifice them to be able to play them. And essentially you kill them. You burn those cards and they usually don't come back. But that gives you the luxury, the opportunity to play this more powerful card. So you're kind of making this much like a Slay the Spire kind of experience, this kind of push-pull, this kind of like, what can I live without to be able to do something more dramatic, more damaging, a little more powerful. So you're making very sort of selective and sometimes quite painful edits to your hand to be able to respond to the cards that are being played in front of you. The game rolls all of this out over the course of multiple steps and things like that to be able to kind of wrap your brain around. And there's certainly much more to it than that, but that is the hook of the thing. You're, in a lot of ways, just trying to play more powerful cards and stay in the game a little bit longer. Every time you win a round, and this is where it gets kind of creepy, there is a little scale on the table between you and your opponent. If you beat him in a round by a certain number of points, he'll put random teeth on the scale on his side of the table. And you can and as soon as there are enough teeth there to sort of tip the scale in his direction, you beat him. So at one point in the game, in your course of exploring the creepy cabin that you're in, you find a pair of pliers, and silly me, I thought, well, I just put the pliers on the scale. It feels like this is an advantage. This is something you can sort of deploy to save yourself. But oh no, in first person, you start pulling teeth out of your mouth.
Oh God, no.
And dropping them on the scale just so you can stay in the game a little bit longer.
Okay.
Yeah. It's really quite menacing and creepy.
See, you can do that, like 20, 30 times and you're done?
Right, exactly. You can't do it forever. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I'm like, oh, that was a turn I didn't see coming. I just thought, pliers are heavy. I'll just put them on the scale. But nope. You have other plans.
I mean, that would have been a much better thing to do.
Sure, probably a little bit smarter, but teeth apparently are the preferred currency in this thing. Yeah. like Slay the Spire, the game, the procession of the game takes place over a map. And here your opponent will roll out the map on the table in front of you with his long, creepy death fingers. And it's kind of a 3D representation of an explorer going through the woods, and you have different sort of icons, and you kind of choose your path through it. And your opponent will sort of spin a bit of a yarn as you make your way through it. Like, how did you end up at this cabin in the woods? And you started off your exploration and you sat by a campfire, or you came across some explorers who lost their way and are ravenous and looking at you with hungry eyes as they sit around a fire. And you have the opportunity at these things to sort of get new cards, to upgrade cards. There's a whole sigil thing where you get the opportunity to sort of brand cards. So if you put this, one of the brands I got was Eternal Life.
Sounds good.
Which is kind of an interesting, super helpful, but not Eternal Life for me, Eternal Life for one of the cards that I would otherwise sacrifice. So if you find a card that you can put this little sigil on, every time you sort of sacrifice it, it immediately resurrects and comes back to life, and you can use it again.
Yeah.
It's almost like a cheat, right? So yeah, again, there's a lot of sort of layers to this thing. So on the most basic surface place, like I said, just trying to sort of play better cards, have a higher score. But like Slay the Spire, I think before it layers in a ton of really kind of additional just fun and occasionally quite stressful choices that you have to make to be able to sort of give up advantages in favor of a short-term solution, or to be able to have a little perk like, the Everlasting Life Sigil, and decide sort of what card do you want to put it on, how to best use it to to get the sacrifices you need to play stronger cards, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, all of that goes into this kind of Inscryption deck building game experience.
Man, so how many deck building games is that for you this year?
It is a lot, I think, over the last year or two. I think since kind of discovering Slay the Spire, I think you were the one who were like, hey, check out this game, and it was Slay the Spire. I've probably played 6 or 7 different ones since then.
I mean, I barely have enough, I can't even keep up with like the entire deck of cards in Slay the Spire, let alone like these 5 or 6 other games.
Yeah. I have like over 100 hours with Slay the Spire. I played a lot of that game. So the fact that I still had time for 6 other card-based games is insane. I feel like the longer we do Video Game Hangover, the more my sort of specialty becomes golf games and deck building games. With occasional check-ins for Animal Crossing.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, so the demo for Inscryption is its own sort of isolated kind of, I don't know if again, like I've not played the whole game. I don't know if it is the introduction to the game, if it's a separate thing, but it stands alone pretty effectively, I think, just as a sample of what you're getting yourself into, and just as kind of a fun, creepy thing to kind of poke around with and play with and wrap your brain around some of the mechanisms and mechanics of this thing. So yeah, would recommend if any of this appeals to you. If you like Slay the Spire, this is an easy recommendation. I think this is you will find it pushes a lot of the same buttons that game did, but it's definitely a much more kind of dynamic experience in terms of kind of creating a setting, creating a space, creating a bit of a haunted house for you to kind of wander around and solve puzzles and fight for your life in. The way that the game sort of builds characterization in your opponent, who isn't sort of like another player in the sense that you're trying to play poker against him or something like that. He's more of like a dungeon master almost, in that he's sort of creating a scenario. He's sort of dealing himself in periodically. He's playing characters. He's a little unreliable, and he will cheat sometimes, which is kind of interesting and fun. The game also sort of builds characterization into some of your cards. You're making these tough decisions on what cards do I want to sacrifice, but some of them have like little animated characters on them that will talk to you and give you advice, and will occasionally complain if you've sacrificed them too many times. Which is kind of fun too. It makes it a little harder to sort of sacrifice a card that you're like, oh, I like that little character. I like talking to him. So it makes you feel a little badder about throwing him on the fire to burn him so you can play a stronger card.
What do you do if the guy cheats?
You have to sort of like adapt to it. The one encounter I came to where he sort of bended the rules to be able to sort of like succeed over you in a situation where he otherwise wouldn't have. The little chatty card in my hand was sort of like, he's cheating right now, don't let him do that. And it kind of gave you advice on how to sort of best get around it and sort of respond to the dungeon master's kind of manipulation. I don't know how much of that is in the full game, but it was just interesting in that, this character, this other player kind of created a set of rules and then really was quite blatant about breaking them to his advantage. So yeah, I don't know, I dig it. I like that, there is the mechanic of the card game, which is fun and compelling in its own right. But the creators of this game sort of built all of this other stuff around it to kind of set the stage and be super complex and interesting.
That's interesting. Yeah, that doesn't really come up as a mechanic that often, at least not in games that I played. Kind of an interesting little twist on it.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure they do it it sounds like they do it in ways that make the gameplay, where it's like an interesting gameplay spin and not just like, oh, you should have won on that turn, but he just wrote down the wrong number, so he won, actually. Because that would be frustrating.
Yeah, and I suspect it would never be done to the extent that it would wash you out of the game or create a fail state for you. That it's always meant to be kind of an interesting kind of narrative choice more than anything.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah. But a very cool game. Just one, gorgeous to look at. Two, just super fun and kind of compelling and interesting to kind of explore and poke around at and unsurface some of these other little characterization pieces and just sort of the sense of kind of creepiness and foreboding, and the whole thing done in this kind of dark sepia tones and lit by candlelight and stuff like that. It's just, again, very, very, I think like Spookware, in fact. Both of these have a very sort of different kind of horror tone to them. But the creator of Inscryption clearly went at this with a level of sort of passion for this and enthusiasm for the world and the card game he was trying to create, as it just sort of oozes very sort of deliberate choices.
Mm-hmm. I see this pop up every once in a while, and it looks very striking. All the previews I've seen for it are just very mysterious, where it's very hard to tell what the actual game is about, so that just kind of adds to the just mystique around it. So
yeah,
I should just try the demo. See
try the demo. It's probably get through the whole thing about an hour. Or maybe a little bit longer if you're not so good at the card game, but your opponent's patient and will occasionally remind you of some. I keep trying to draw extra cards. Mm-hmm. I'm not sort of. I find that I'm not sort of satisfied with what I have in my hand, and I'm like, let me pull another one out of the pile, and he will. You can only pick one per round, and I feel like he reminded me of that 6 or 7 times until it finally burned into my brain. So again, I think it has pretty good kind of guide rails for kind of keeping you on the path of the brief narrative of this demo, and quickly kind of teaching you the rules of the game and giving you a taste of the other little elements of the escape room haunted house kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I would recommend it. Absolutely. The demo's great. Based on this demo, I would absolutely put down the money to buy the full game. Just need to find a little time in my schedule to slot in my new obsession, I'm sure.
You got another card game, sure.
Exactly. I got to get them all in before the end of 2021.
Man, I should have done this earlier because I've been meaning to do this all year. I wanted to give a shout out to another spooky game that I didn't actually play this year, but it's one of maybe my favorite spooky game of all time, which is cool. Devotion. I think I talked about it last Halloween. It's very unusual circumstances surrounding this game. I'll make this quick because we want to wrap up in a minute. But it's built as a horror game, essentially, from the studio called Red Candle Games. And you may have heard about it because it was out for like a week a couple of years ago. And then they got into some trouble with the Chinese government due to some Easter egg a developer had put in there. It was, kind of disappointing and irresponsible. But it was effectively just removed from all storefronts for like a year and a half. You couldn't buy it. People didn't know if you were ever going to be able to buy it again. But it came back within the last year. Red Candle Games just selling it directly off their website, which I'll have a link to in the show notes. and I was able to play it. And it's not only I'm pretty confident in saying it's my favorite scary game. That's a short list, but it's also just beyond being a scary game. I think it's just one of the greatest games ever made. Like, there's so much more going on in this game beyond just the spookiness and the atmosphere. If you played their previous game, Detention, you might sort of have an idea of what to expect. But just really unique storyline and presentation. It kind of takes place across multiple time periods in Taiwan. Gets a little bit into sort of like weird social dynamics going on at the time back in like 1980s Taiwan. Got a lot of terrifying Taiwanese spooky imagery and rituals and cults and all this sort of stuff. But just all sorts of surprises and really interesting storytelling in this game. And now you can play it, so that's great. So
excellent.
Really can't speak more highly about this. Hope everybody, if they're looking for something unusual and kind of spooky to play this Halloween weekend, hopefully they'll give Devotion a try, because it's very, very good.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I do remember you being very enthusiastic about this, and then quite unceremoniously it disappeared and was not available to be enjoyed by anybody else. So very excited to hear that it is back and available again.
Yeah, I should double check this, because I'm always like, oh, I hope it hasn't disappeared again like the last 24 hours. But pretty sure the last time I looked, you could just go and buy it off their website. So
cool.
Go and do that.
Good. So I'll mention for our listeners before we wrap up that we did play. We played a ton of games and talked about a ton of games on this episode. If you're ever like, geez, what was that game that they were talking about? You can, of course, look at the show notes in your podcast player of choice. It will have a bit of a timeline of everything we talked about and what those games are called. You can always go to VGHangover.com as well for more info on that, with links and all kinds of other fun stuff. So yeah. Do that.
And one other thing even is I just have... Ooh. I was talking about the whole massive list of spooky games that I was compiling on itch that I didn't even get around to finishing, but I will put that list... it's an itch compilation, or collection, whatever they call them on that website.
Collection, yep.
Yeah, so that'll be on VGHangover.com as well. You can see all those other spooky... maybe potentially spooky, maybe just kind of cute ghost video games you can check out.
Cool. Yeah, itch.io has been kind of a fun repository. Like, the entire front page of itch right now is indie video games of varying levels of intensity. If you like cute and fuzzy bunnies, there is an indie horror video game of that, I'm sure. And if you like blood dripping down the walls, unrequited terror, I'm sure it hits that button as well. So do not be afraid to hit up itch.io for all of your spooky games needs this Halloween season.
Yeah. It's made me aware that I'm pretty sure that you could go an entire year playing only games where you play as like a tiny witch who lives in a little like little cottage in the woods. It's hilarious.
Excellent. I appreciate that aesthetic. That works.
Yeah.
Good. If you need any more video game hangover in your brain, you should always follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/VGHangover. And don't be afraid to hit up the aforementioned VGHangover.com. You can also hop into Discord. Tell us about your favorite spooky games. Ask us about the ones that we and the other members of our community are playing. You can get a link to join our Discord at VGHangover.com as well. We would love for you to subscribe, rate, and review us on your Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube podcast machine of choice, and help us out by telling your friends about the show.
Yeah, tell them that we're recommending all manner of spooky games this week. That one friend who's just looking for something to play on Halloween. Send them right over here. That's great.
Yeah, DJ's got a whole collection for him to play.
Yeah, some of them might actually be good. No, I mean, They're all good. What am I talking about?
Top quality.
Yeah, only the best. Want to give thanks again. Speaking of top quality, oh man. Special thanks to Hal Binderman for our music this week. please head on over to heavyviper.bandcamp.com. Listen to more of his stuff. It's all very good. Top quality, as we said.
Except we didn't use Hellbinder Red's music this week.
Oh, I'm sure there's some of it in there.
Okay. All right. You have a plan.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Well, I apologize for for correcting you. I don't know what I was thinking.
What do you think they're listening to? What's that right now in the background? That sounds like Hal Binerman to me.
It does. I can hear it coming from the distance.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Ooh,
spooky. All right. We'll be back next week. Hey, Animal Crossing next week. Yes. We're just going to make a hard pivot from Halloween to Animal Crossing and Extra Life. So hold on to your hats, folks.
Yeah.
Until then, this is Randy Dickinson.
This is DJ Ross.
Thanks for listening to Video Game Hangover. Goodbye.
Good night.
See ya.
Break.